Joelle Grogan is a senior lecturer at Middlesex University in London. She is also the creator of Sticky Tricky Law, an online project aimed at making Brexit and other legal issues understandable. Joelle, thanks so much for joining us. This vote was a very tight one, a difference of just 16 votes. What do you think this says about the deep divisions that remain about Brexit?
I think there's one absolute truth when it comes to Brexit, not only in the British Parliament, but right across the country, which is there are deep political divisions. Now, in the vote today, there was a very important political statement which said, move that date, move the 31st of October 2019, which is the current date at which the UK will withdraw from the European Union, and right now, without a deal, on a no-deal basis. Now, next week is going to be incredibly important from a legal perspective, from a Brexit perspective, because it's very likely Boris Johnson will bring back another motion, another question to the House of Commons, asking for agreement, asking for approval of that deal, but also, more importantly, a withdrawal agreement bill. This is a piece of legislation that would bring the withdrawal agreement into British law. It is one of 4 things that have to happen before a withdrawal agreement becomes law. The other 2 would be agreement by qualified majority in the European Council. That's all the heads of the member states of the other member states, but also approval of the European Parliament. I think today was a central question about time, that there's no time left to really be giving proper scrutiny to what is one of the biggest changes in British law, certainly within the last generation.
Speaking of time, by law, Boris Johnson has to request an extension from the EU. Clock is ticking, less than an hour now. He has been adamant. He has said, I will not negotiate a delay with the EU, neither does the law compel me to do so. What do you think of that declaration?
It's not true that the law doesn't compel him. It creates a legal obligation on the Prime Minister to write a letter. And in fact, the letter is quite literally dictated in the law. If Boris Johnson does not send a letter to the European Council that request for a 3-month extension until the 31st of January 2020, then we'll see a lot of quite serious things happening, both politically and legally. On Monday, the Inner Court of Session, that's an appeal court in Scotland, in Edinburgh, they've withheld judgment to decide whether or not they will be issuing what's called a mandatory order, a court order to the Prime Minister of the UK to follow the law. Now, in very simple terms, in British law, there is nothing more important than an Act of Parliament, and the Ben Act, which is an Act of Parliament, obliges the Prime Minister to send that letter. We might be seeing a situation, if he doesn't, in which a court of the United Kingdom is saying the Prime Minister is not following the law, which is an incredibly serious constitutional and legal statement just on its own.
The government has said it would try to pass that deal again on Monday. What do you expect will happen then and in the days leading up to that?
A lot of very intense political debate. Now, this bill that has to become law before the 31st of October, this is a huge constitutional document. It will change the political, social, legal, economic foundations of the country. And it would be very difficult to pass such a law quickly between the House of Commons and the House of Lords. It'd be very difficult in time. Now, if we look back at a similar piece of legislation that was doing making a huge amount of changes to the UK, that was about 2 years ago. Now, in that piece of legislation, it was the European Union Withdrawal Act 2017 for all the legal scholars. But they had 36 days of debate and consideration and lawmaking before that bill became law. Right now, there's only 9 days, and we'll very likely see a huge number of amendments being proposed and voted on and potentially passed either in the House of Commons or the House of Lords. It's incredibly difficult to see such a big piece of legislation passed quickly, especially when we have not yet seen a draft of this piece of legislation.
A lot more to come and a lot at stake. Joelle Grogan with Middlesex University in London, thanks so much.